Now you'll see how the Hindenburg exploded and burnt.
But of course it had 50 million times as much gas in it.
Yes, that is so.
It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship. It bursts into flames. Get it started, get it started. It's fighting, and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my, get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 20, 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific...
May 1937. 40 years of airship development founder as the Hindenburg crashes near New York. In less than 35 seconds, the hydrogen in her gas bags explodes, plummeting her 200 feet to Earth. 35 people died in the Holocaust, and with them the whole European airship program. The skeptics who had said its demands on the technology of the age had been too great were justified, and scientists turned to designing aeroplanes instead.
That must surely be one of the most horrifying moments recorded on film. And it's little wonder that the disaster put an end to the development of the airships. However, new materials and construction techniques may give the airships a new future. And this documentary, The Return of the Airship, begins with a look at one company which is investigating the use of airships larger than today's jumbo jets.
Manchester liners, who made a fortune from containerized cargo using ships, believe airships could fill a gap in today's transport system. They formed a subsidiary company and plan to fly a small airship to study the possibilities.
Kuwait is something like 2,600 miles direct by air. It's about 11,200 miles around the Cape. For a normal ship, 10 days loading, 32 days sailing, 10 days discharging, that's 52 days. Now the airship, say 1 day loading, 1 day out to Kuwait, 1 day discharging, 1 day back in ballast if necessary. Now, we reckon that the interest charges on that equipment alone for the 52 days could work out to £58 a tonne. This is what it's all about.
Tony Roberts, managing director of Manchester Liners, believes there are profits to be made from airships, perhaps.
We are always on the lookout as to where we go next. We're always wanting to expand. You've got to move fast to keep ahead of your competitors, and we think the airship is a logical complementary move for us.
What were your main reasons for choosing Max Reinisch as the managing director of your firm?
When the idea of cargo airships was put before us, and it seemed so logically right for so many needs, we naturally looked around, where do we go for experts? And Max Reinisch had sounded fairly loud and clear for, I think, about 18 months on this subject, and so we approached him. And it is our feeling that he is the foremost expert of the airship system.
So you've got a vast container base here.
Yes.
Now, although you won't be
Quite
building...
a small one, actually.
You won't be building 10,000 feet of concrete.
Yes.
You're still got to build vast complexes.
No, containerization is a new concept. There are few real container bases in England. They're thinking about 4 or 5. The system which I'm projecting with the route is a series of small container bases scattered around. And the airships are operating upon set routes, something like this here. These are the main European routes, and as you see here, the E11, the green route, operates from Glasgow through Edinburgh, Carlisle, Manchester, Southampton, through France, Lyon, Marseille, Rome, Naples, down to Malta. Malta, she turns round and back. It is essentially a railway system in the air.
Manchester Liners' new offices came from container ship profits, but Max Reinisch sees beyond mere profit.
It's a question of alternatives. The alternative is to carry on spending huge sums of money on roads and improving ports and improving all the surface transport systems which we've inherited from our ancestors.
But aren't aeroplanes good enough?
Airplanes are dependent upon runway systems. The airplane, I'm not anti-airplane, but it is an inherently inefficient aircraft.
The German Westdeutsche Luftwerbung is the largest aeroplane hire firm in Europe. Ironically, it's also the only firm in the world known to be building new airships on the profits from conventional aircraft. In this new factory going up at Mülheim in the Ruhr will be built the envelope for a sister ship to the same company's Europe 1. By this summer, it should be ready to fly. Their airships are blimps, gas bags without any rigid internal framework, as vulnerable to bad weather as light aircraft. The future airships, incomparably larger than these, will be as immune to the elements as a jumbo jet. The faith of the man behind the project, Herr Theodor Willenkemper, is so unshakable that he can even quote a price for them.
The price for one airship, for the standard airship, which is 500 feet long, and he can empty and freight 40 tons. The price for this airship is 1,500,000 D-marks. It's a very cheap aeroplane.
That's £150,000.
In the moment, we have orders for 3 ships and 1 for us.
Who's ordering the 3 ships?
2 ships are going to Tokyo, and 1 is going to Paris the next year.
How much profit do you estimate that you'll make from an airship in a year?
We have some profit with this ship and with the next ship. We make advertising and other things, and we can building with the profits from this.
Easy to forget the hard necessity of making a profit with them. The romance of flying almost silently above the countryside, so low that it's possible to look out through the open windows and pick out the expressions on the faces of spectators below. The pilot can navigate by roads and railway lines, and if he loses his way, he can switch off the engines and glide down low enough to
Of course, a blimp is easier to build and cheaper to build, and we have no use for rigid airships, only useful when you build it in a very large size, like Graf Zeppelin and Hindenburg, and we think they are not useful today.
Well, a lot of British scientists think there's a great use for rigid airships for carrying cargo.
That's right, but you can do it with a blimp easier, because a blimp is lighter than a rigid airship. And because of the new synthetics you can use for the envelope, you will have more satisfactory on cargo and weight especially.
But would it be able to bear the weight of the cargo in the same way as a rigid?
Yes, of course.
Why?
You can reinforce the envelope. It's no problem.
How would you do it?
With a new sort of synthetics, I can show you one here. That's synthetic which we got the best result with. And this is originally 5 layers, including the coating, was neoprene coated.
Why do you need 5 layers?
To get the strings, of course, the safety.
What are the 5 layers made up of?
Inside, it's a special foam from synthetics. I can't tell you the original type because it's a secret, you know.
The Germans' confidence in their secret progress fails to impress the most experienced airline operator in this country. Peter Macefield, chairman of the British Airports Authority, admits to no more than a certain nostalgia.
About
25 years ago now, I did a very detailed study, I think the last official study done for the government on the R-103, when we went into the analysis of the whole operation, including costs, and came reluctantly to the conclusion it was a dead duck. And then 10 years after that, when in BEA and president of the Institute of Transport, I did a complete study again of airship possibilities for long-distance operations. Again, very sadly, came to the conclusion it just wouldn't work.
Well, what kind of demand would you say there is now for the airship?
Well, the demand, of course, is always there for a good load carrier, which can go places, can have good docking facilities, and do a job at the right cost. And this is where the airship comes completely unstuck.
Aircraft designer and test pilot Darrell Stinton, an influential convert to airships.
The airship appears to become efficient when it's carrying very heavy loads, which means really that when the airship is large in size. So for carrying loads of, let's say, 500 or 1,000 tons, if you want to lift an aeroplane into the air, let's imagine this, it's going to weigh 1,000 tons, you have to have something like 1,200 tons of thrust to get this airborne vertically. But with the airship, you can have a 1,000-ton displacement airship, which, said quickly, you can have it tied with a thread or a piece of string, pull a pair of nail scissors from your pocket and cut it, and it's flying. It's as simple as that, in theory.
An airship, unlike an aeroplane, becomes more efficient the larger it gets. The British R-33 could lift 59 tons. The German Hindenburg, only slightly larger, lifted 228 tons, while the proposed airship of today, bigger again, would have a gross lift of 1,000 tons. The snag is that much of this lift is likely to be absorbed by the structural weight of the airship itself.
Although there was a very marked improvement in the military German airships in the First World War, which was achieved largely at the expense of safety, if one can put it that way. In other words, the structure was made weaker and weaker in order to make it lighter, and they could get away with it.
Peter Brooks, Peter Macefield's assistant in the 1954 airship study.
When it came to designing something that was supposed to be safe and to last for years in service, this striking improvement in the early period couldn't be maintained, and the German civil experience, which is perhaps the best, and obviously the best, averages about, taking these figures, about 55% of the gross lift as the empty weight of the airship. The British performance, incidentally, was far worse. It was more like 70%.
The sheer scale of the pre-war airships almost defies belief. As this 1928 film shows, they were built almost entirely by hand. Fewer than a dozen machines were used to build the R-100, a framework of girders almost twice as long as St. Paul's is high. Hundreds of labourers spent 3 months varnishing the crisscross of duralumin girders, more than 100 tons of them slung from the top of the shed by cobwebbing wires and roof railways. A crystal palace of giant Meccano clamped together between polygonal frames. Inside the framework were the gas bags made of gold-beater's skin, bullocks' intestines. The stomachs of more than 1 million American oxen were used to float R-101. The largest of its 14 gas bags, when inflated, would have burst through the roof of Westminster Hall. Outside, the framework was covered with linen stretched tight by dope. Their size increased their vulnerability. More than one giant airship was written off by one slip of the ground crews, ripping her belly or buckling her framework as she was walked out of the shed. The designer of R100, Sir Barnes Wallis, is still at his drawing board at the age of 84. Unpredictably, the experience of 20 years airship work has made him the revivalists' most formidable opponent.
Because there are corresponding improvements in the technology of heavier than aircraft.
But surely modern technology means that it would be quite easy and quite possible to build a ship if one were required.
Yes, if you like to put it that way, but the airship will cost enormously more than the airplane, having first taken into account the cost of the shed, which will be millions, and out of which you will be required perhaps to turn 4 airships or half a dozen airships. What will you then do with your shed?
You see, a lot of the people who want to bring back airships say that now the time is ripe to bring them back, that the airships that you people were building were too small.
I would say that economically they simply couldn't compete. If heavier than air flight was fundamentally impossible, I would be the first to start building an airship. But once the Wrights had demonstrated the possibility of HA flight, the airship was doomed from the beginning, just like the dinosaurus. Would you like to have dinosauruses wandering about England? No, we're out of date.
The Germans are building another airship.
Are they?
Are they mistaken, do you think?
Oh, quite. Quite. You will find as the years go by that there will be no use for it. You see, none of these people who are advocating the revival of the airship are aware of the secret progress which we are making in heavier than air.
So we're going to see revolutionary airplanes soon?
Yes, you
carrying
can.
freight?
You certainly can. I can take a string of international standard containers which are 8 feet square, running up to 40 feet long. I can just push a string of them into my airplane quite easily.
Well, we haven't seen this yet, have we?
No, it's on my drawing board. You can look at it if you wish to later on, but not to show the general public.
Loads too bulky for any aeroplane, such as turbines or prefabricated buildings, are the revivalists' prime target. They claim airships could cut delivery times by half and clear congested roads. Floating in the empty airspace near the ground, they could perform tasks beyond our present transport system. This is the largest surviving relic of the British airship programme, the control cabin of the R-33 in the museum hangar at RAF Henlow near Cardington. Will its successors ever float proudly over the great sheds, or is the airship a museum piece forever? Not so many people now laugh at today's airship revivalists, but their schemes are still far from acceptance. Modern technology could probably succeed where it failed in the 30s, but modern economics may prove too great an obstacle. For the first time in 40 years, a British airship scheme now has commercial backing. With it, today's enthusiasts have what they've been asking for, a chance to prove their case. If they can come up with enough of the right answers, this could be just the beginning.